Welcome to Ferment Radio, a podcast series on bacterial and social fermentation. Fermentation can incite social action, spark creativity, and bring surprising new tastes to our lives. My name is Aga Pokrywka, and I invite you to join us in a conversation on living interconnectivities, from macro to micro, from societal to cellular, and from global to personal. Garden. It invites us to sit down and watch things grow. It makes us work with gazillions of other species to make them flourish. Silent observation or site-specific mindful labor can be a form of wandering, seeing magic in what's common and perceiving what's repetitive with new eyes. This is how Noora Sandgren, a visual artist and art educator from Finland, works in her family garden. She collaborates with climates, insects, and expired light-sensitive material to create cameraless photograms of shared chemistry, of composting organic matter, microbes, human breaths, and sunlight. In this episode, Noora takes us to her garden, where she wanders while taking lensless images and patiently waits for long exposures for the magic to happen. Can you describe to us your garden, Noora?
The garden space, it is located in Hiidenvesi, and actually I think just yesterday I was Googling again what this word means, hiisi, and if it has like a nice translation in English, but it didn't. It was translated into devil or goblin, but I think those don't really represent the Finnish feeling of it. Like it's something that used to refer to like these sacred places, at times before Christianity. So and there is like folk tales about these creatures that would sometimes help people around in the forest, but they should also be respected. But then there's the reference also to specific spaces. So I don't know. Maybe it's just interesting thing. Also for me to think about like that just by coincidence our sacred place is now located in that kind of area. So it's not actually that far away from Helsinki, and it's also not like even though it is a paradise sometimes, but it's still in the middle of like a lot of human sounds, and it's not like far away from all human traces or anything like that, but just a place for me to also have some distance from this city pace of life. But I guess like you were asking about the meaning, and that kind of goes back in my history quite long, like far away back, because we always used to have like this allotment gardening place located in Helsinki Central Park Forest. There's specific places where people can do gardening, and my parents always did that. So I have been growing there, playing in the muds and soils of that place. But then we also had like my first garden was my grandparents' garden, and it was a place that they built like after war, and I think it like now later on it's quite touching to think about that all those berries and apple trees were like also raising me up, like they are part of my bodily chemistry, and so it's like to imagine that after war they were able to do it, to build a place of so many different plants and like multi-species place to live in, and to care and to be cared, and to also concentrate on things like beauty. So I think just in the context of like Finland getting out of the war times, it's still touching. And it was like maybe now 13 years ago that after they had already died, that we couldn't like keep it because of like this land has become so expensive in around Helsinki. So there was this cleaning up of the all the memories that the place had kept, and that was kind of photographic to me, that somehow that the space kept those smells and memories, and now it was to be cleaned and ripped down and kind of given up. But then there were also these really old, or I don't know, old, but apple trees. Actually, they were the age that I am now, like in 40s, and I remember each one of them, and it was like really heartbreaking to think about that. Maybe like all those times that they were cared for, that they would be just chopped off and things would be built on it. So I think it was very difficult to say goodbye to those trees. And yeah.
So now there is like a housing there where the garden used to be.
Now it's like, yeah.
Wow.
It is part of this trend of like building more densely. Yeah, so but I think like just saying goodbye to that place was hard, and it also taught me, just like probably quite many feel, that when you are grieving for something, you are also some things become more clear. And to me it was like this odd sense of like how to grieve these other kinds of bodies than mine, that there are no funerals or no rituals for those kind of bodies. And just like it took this many years that also the academia started to write more about the grievability of different kinds of bodies. But so from that grief, I think when we found this new place, it's my parents' place, but we coexist there with everything, all kinds of beings. But when this new place was introduced, I think it felt very strange, because of course when you lose something, it's something unique and you cannot replace it. And I have like, it is a very strange thing to deal with. So I had this strong need of like situating myself and rooting myself to this new place and finding a meaningful connection and like really start building relationships. So I think that was like the starting point for the work in garden, that to understand that in order to build a real relationship with the place or with other people or other animals, we need to spend time and like be together. So from there, this like sense of kinship and commitment comes from, and then you start to see everything that constructs the place. It's not just a landscape, like a general word of landscape, but it's specific subjects that are making it up, and you are in the middle of all this happening.
I know that one of your main mediums you are working with is photography, or even like lensless or cameraless photography, right? And could you tell us more, like how your kind of a professional in a way or artistic medium interferes or is connected to the garden which you just described its history.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, my like when it comes to my artistic practice, like before art schools, I was studying social psychology, so that is like already thinking about how we form our identities within social connections and with our environments. So I think that was like important base for me when I started to study arts, because then I was doing my thesis on the experiences of justice, and even though it was within human world, then I think all that has affected quite a lot on my take on how I think about photography. So I think when you go to art school, you are introduced with all types of all genres of all the different ways that you can use your medium. But then at the end, you have to also learn to look at your medium critically. And I think for me, it was always very clear that photography was strongly related to power, and it just became like more and more clear to me that it just started to trouble me the way photography could, like, of course there's many kind of photographies, but to me it started to become difficult how to think about this representation and voice, and how to think about how photography could like take something. It was just so much about taking and shooting and capturing something out of the context, and that could also create like this sense of distance, that these things are somehow distant from myself, and also the problems of like one perspective when world is like multi-perspectival and multi-sensual, and then the problem of like with the representational quality, that there's this definition that comes so easily to somehow look like it's truth, and it might help people to categorize, but then at the same time, when something is defined into something, there's this certain stability that was bothering me, that if, which is kind of analogical to words also, that when something gets a name, then it seems that you you know it, and if you can see it, you can research it, and you gain knowledge, you gain control, and it can lead to like and it has led to like colonialist practices and exploitative practices. So, and then always there is this this notion that easily there is subject that is photographing something that suddenly is the object to be looked at, and this subject relationship is also troubling me because there is a hierarchy, and there is the idea that the subject is the active agent and the object is somehow could be resource to be used, or for me to be modified according to my intentions. And of course, like agency is a big part of photography, and it's also this culture that we live in, that you are supposed to be branding yourself and carrying your things and representing your art. But then what about if like it's a quite heavy thing also, and I am wired into more like this connectivity and looking for connections and like interest into building relationhood. So then I think it was quite understandable that by lucky coincidence also that I found on my father's old photographic papers that were like older than me, and they were useless in a cardboard box. And I think because of this like uselessness, they were also somehow free because they had been categorized somehow as waste. And also because of this space that was making me able to be playable. I think that I I started working with cameraless images, like experiment with plants, and I would leave them on top of the papers outside and under a glass. And in the morning I would find them, there would be humidity and this reddish color, and it just resembled me of breathing. And then I think it was magical. But I also thought that, well, I'm not sure about this. Like people, of course, they have been picking flowers forever, but is there another way also for me to develop my own relationship to photography? And then I decided to put myself in the image, and I created this score for myself that I would just be sitting with the paper, pressing my head's weight on it, and do nothing for 30 minutes, and always work outside. Also, this paper, it quite quickly I started to find like analogies to my own skin, like that we would both be sensitive, have like sensitive surfaces, and be able to record traces of touch and different kinds of touch. And if I was sweating or crying, I started to think about what does it mean that my chemistry is being sucked by the paper, that we are exchanging chemistries, that what is the chemistry that also gets into my body through my lips, maybe, that I hadn't think about before, that what is the photographic paper made of, for example, and if it was something dangerous or toxic, then what would that mean? And quite so within time, I think in this like quite intimate connection making, I think photographs started to become something more as a specific beings with different kinds of agency that I had been thinking before. So now it was something much more lively and unpredictable and wild.
Now when you started to describe this process, I realized that I cannot imagine, like, so you work with this photographic paper, and can you see the results quite quickly, or you still need to process somehow the paper?
Well, when I have been doing these slow breathing images that I named dialogue, sometimes the time seems very long and sometimes very fast, and when the time is up, I just quickly like put the image away and I don't really look at it, because of course I'm also protecting it from more light, but then I might leave it in a box for like I have some images that have been waiting for my return for maybe since 2015. And so but if I return to those, then I scan them. I don't use the darkroom chemistry. Like originally I was also a bit like afraid of that chemistry and the toxicity, like I could sense it. So that's why I decided to scan them. But And then if I scan an image and I meet there's a new kind of meeting when it is digitized because it is bigger on my screen and I can zoom in it. So it's a very different kind of situation than just experiencing the process. But the originals, they keep on living and changing and fading away. And it is important to me. So the images that I am showing in exhibitions usually have been kind of like slices from this process. But it's the whole process that is meaningful and the liveliness of the image.
Because probably when you scan the image, it also kind of changes it, right? Because scanner has a light when it moves through the image, right?
Yeah, it's a second exposure time because the image has a long exposure time under sun. But when you scan it, that's also different time than photographic time because it takes several minutes for the light to go through it.
Yeah.
And it is also destroying the image at the same time. So it is making it more visible to me, but destroying it. So It's a paradoxical exposure.
So you kind of you need to destroy it in order to document it or preserve it in a way, because when it becomes digital,
something gets
it's kind of frozen in time suddenly.
Destroyed, but something gets maybe also more visibility. So of course, when an image is digitized, it's a whole different image in a way.
You work with a photographic paper, you brief on it, you come close to it, you put the plants from your garden on it. But I know that you also work with your garden's compost and the paper itself. Does this process somehow differs from what you described?
Yeah, I think the compost was it's a good example of what site-specific, site-sensitive work means, because if you spend time with the place and you work with the place, then you are open to kind of perceive the offerings of the place and everything in it offers to you. So I think compost is a very natural thing to look more closely to me, because of course, like, garden is a place where you can see the material cyclicality happening all the time, and compost is part of that, and it's something that is visibly a place of like reciprocity also, that I am bringing my food waste to the compost, and the compost with all its trillions of agents are producing good fertile soil that can help then plants to grow and be safe also from bad agents. So it's like something that is connecting me to soil very, very concretely. And in our garden we have like very different kinds of compost. There are these more dry compost for the garden waste, like weeds and stuff. But then there are these compost that are more closed, where we put our food waste, and we are also bringing that from the city to there, because we consider it valuable material. And then there is the how you call it, the house toilet place, which is also like that stuff is also being composted, but we don't put that into like veggies, but
sure,
it produces very nice soil also. But then here at city, I also have vermicompost and bokashi. So there's so many different kinds of compost.
And vermicompost is the one with worms, or
yeah, with these red wriggler worms.
Exactly.
Yeah, which are different than the earthworms in the garden. But I think this compost is also it is something that was like intriguing for me. I was curious because I was building my relationship to photography and noticing that we have like maybe very much shared history and evolution and how photography is related to consumerism. And then when you live with food waste and you look at the decomposing and of material, then you start to think about where is this avocado peel coming from, and what distance, and what does the surface contain. So you start to think about what does food waste mean in general, and when I looked up a percentage of the whole planet's like food production and food waste out of it, it was pretty horrible. So I think this is interesting, like to think about the consuming and needs that the photographic photographs create for us, and then to meditate it with the compost, because and also these problems that I mentioned with photography. If I insert like this old photographic paper in the compost, then there is like all this tiny life that are like specialized into deconstructing forms. So I think it's really nice to meditate, like how does the photographic paper suit to the material cycle. I mean, it is very clear that this resin-coated paper is not something that I want to eat. And I also want to be kind to these microbial co-workers. So I'm not leaving it there forever. But I think it's been interesting to notice that some fungi are able to inhabit the kind of more difficult, more toxic environment, and even use it for them, for their
growth.
Yeah, so I'm interested in this. What can I learn from their abilities? And anyway, like who are these microbial agents that also are part of my microbiota? So who are these tiny ones that I share my life with? And it's such a area of strangeness, but then there's, and sometimes also disgust, but I think somehow it is incredibly interesting to understand how little we understand of those. Like I learned from somewhere that we only have identified maybe 5% of all the fungi.
It made me also wonder, since you are kind of capturing with the photographic paper like a different, let's say, actors, whether it's your breath or the microbes or whatever processes are happening in the compost, are they very different from each other, actually?
Sometimes I talk about the microbes as creative writers, because of course there is creativity. It's not just humans it's not just something that we only have, but creativity within nature is that we belong in, is like all the time happening. I mean, everything is being recreated, and so it, in a way, it is no surprise that it is so incredibly detailed and complex. Like these images that I have collected from the compost process are the most complex images I have ever seen or been with. And they are complex in a totally bodily way, but also visually.
Could you describe to us somehow those images?
Yeah, of course, they're not always something that I would say that they are pleasing aesthetically. I have to say that I think whenever you are cooperating with something or someone else, you have to become a little bit humble and be ready to work with your ideas about, for example, aesthetics. So sometimes they're not pleasing, but I think that is when I'm have to negotiate more with the images. But one time it was, I think, really touching to find this one paper with the yellow. It looked like a tiny forest. Like if I would lift the paper and look it from the side, it would be so dimensional, 3-dimensional, and the yellow forest was, I think it was magical.
I also have a feeling that the devices for capturing the reality, they also change our experience of reality. I'm, for example, imagining if we would have conversation here without those microphones, would we talk differently? You know, there's always it's a kind of a non-organic, or it's an entity which is not alive and it's human-made, but it still kind of makes us consider it and behave a bit differently.
Everything becomes more intimate when there is there is less mediating somehow between. But of course, still mediating is, we are now talking, like you said, through this technology, and thanks to this technology, things can be shared.
Definitely. I really appreciated what you said before about a ritual, the power of ritual, and how the repetition can also bring newer and newer reflections, that if we would do the same thing but just once, it's a different thing that if we treat it as a series or as a ritual. And I kind of already presume, but correct me if I'm wrong, that many of the things you're sharing here with us are also kind of they came to you through that repetition and the rituals built around your garden and the cameraless photography which you are performing there. But is there anything else kind of which came to you through that building the ritual with the garden, capturing or being with it through the cameraless photography?
When you slow down and start to repeat things, it is creating space for other voices to be heard. So that I would not be just stuck with my own intentions, trying to create something that I have already thought and already build a strategy to get some outcome. So I think it's it's a real challenge to keep the process open-ended. So it's just this illusion that there is some knowledge that would be stable, that would hold, because life is not like that. It is all the time moving and transforming. So why not be more lifelike?
Would you say that being lifelike is being more fluid?
I guess fluidity also could be a photographic situation when you're looking at something too close, maybe with a magnifying glass, and things that first seem to be separate, their boundaries kind of become mixed, and you find beautiful color gradients, and you don't know anymore where something begins and something ends. And so it's a situation that is in flux.
Yeah, I guess it's taking things in a different scale. If we look at things from very far away, these borders start to blur. I don't know, you look on planet Earth, can you see the borders? Very few, I guess. And it's the same if you look through the microscope, suddenly many borders are gone. Maybe you see others, but many are gone. Astronomers look through their telescopes and marvel at the expanse of the cosmos. They see countless stars and realize how insignificant humans are. Microbiologists zoom into their microscopes and marvel at the expanse of the human body. They see countless cells and bacteria and realize how incredibly intricate we are. The sense of wonder doesn't know the scale or limits. If you like this episode, please share it. If you would like to know more about the show, listen to this episode again, or find previous episodes, please go to fermentradio.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. We would love to know what you thought of this conversation, hear your human microbial stories, and your suggestions for the future episodes. We are always looking forward to hearing from you at hello@fermentradio.com. You can also leave us an audio message by connecting to us on our Instagram. Ferment Radio is brought to you by Super Eclectic. This particular episode was recorded during a residency at the BioArt Society Finland and supported by Microbial Life's Practices of New Human Microbial Cultures, a project at the Center of the Social Study of Microbes. I'm very grateful for this support and most of all with all our amazing Ferment Radio listeners. Keep fermenting and stay tuned for the next episode of Ferment Radio.